Hello, everyone, to the first episode of the Libertas International podcast. I am your host. I'm also the founder and president of this nonprofit. My name is Tyler Schwab. I will be your host most weeks on this podcast. It'll either be me talking by myself, as we're doing today. I'll have some guests with me, some of our partner nonprofits, some of my colleagues here at Libertas International. And we just want to share with you the stories of what's going on here at Libertas International, what we're doing day to day, because we're doing so much good work across Latin America. For those of you that have been following us for a while, either on our various social media channels or know someone from the organization, you know that Libertas International is dedicated to the prevention, liberation, and restoration of survivors of human trafficking across Latin America. And we've been in operation for a while, and we're doing some amazing work all over this great continent, all over the region, supporting survivors from various backgrounds, various ages, and we're excited to share more of these stories in a podcast format. And so today, it's just me. You just meet today in my apartment, drinking a Sugar Zero Dr. Pepper cream soda, looking at a wonderful sunset here as summer starts to turn to fall. And I love, the changing of the seasons and the impact that has on the world. And it's got me very reflective on just my journey here at Libertas International. It encourages me to share the story of our founding, where we're all about, what we're doing, why we're here. And it's such an important story because it's so close to my heart. And if it wasn't for these experiences, I don't think Libertas would be in existence today. And so I'm excited to share that journey with you today. Starting out, I'm just a small town kid from Wyoming. That's where our nonprofit is based. That is where I grew up, is in Wyoming. That's where a large section of our donor base is from. And, those of you that grew up in Wyoming, I'm assuming that you probably went to a small high school. There's maybe only 10 high schools across the state that have more than 1,000 kids. And so you just, sometimes in Wyoming you can grow up being very sheltered depending on where you're from, where you live. And that was kind of me. I was sheltered growing up. I lived a great life, and you can read more about my life. We're coming out with a book in the coming months. You should get a copy, more in detail of what my journey looked like before starting Libertas International. But that journey led me to the Dominican Republic. I lived down there for 2 years. And in the Dominican Republic, there were two instances that I can think of that really changed my perspective on just the way the world works. So I remember it was Three Kings Day. I actually give credit to this day for being the day that Libertas was officially founded back in 2010. Three Kings Day, for those of you that don't know what Three Kings Day is or what it means for people in Latin America, it's basically like Christmas Eve, and it's when the three kings gave Jesus his gifts come and basically leave gifts for all the kids. And this day I was out and about, and I was in this guy's house, and he was just super drunk, and his little girl was probably 7 or 8 years old, I think, just very small. And for any of you guys that have seen Harry Potter, I apologize for my squeaky chair I got from the DI. For any of you that have seen Harry Potter, you know who Dobby the house elf is. And I use that comparison because that's kind of the way that she was dressed. Is she was wearing a pillow sack. It was a dress, and she was mopping the floor. She was doing the dishes. She was doing all these things, and the floor was wet. And the dad he was watching a baseball game or something. And so the little girl goes to pick up his food because I guess lunch was ready or whatever. And she comes and she slips and she falls because of the floor she just mopped. And this guy in his drunken state stands up and grabs this whip from behind his chair, grabs her by the hair and smacks her across his face with this whip. Just blood everywhere. The girl starts to cry, mom starts to scream, dad starts to yell. And myself, being a bystander in that moment, I took the whip from him, and the rest of the family went out to the street to try to get her some gauze or something to clean up her cut. And she was the only kid on that street that didn't have anything to play with, because it was that Christmas day, that January 6th. And so while all these kids have, these new toys, new gifts, these new balls, these new playthings, just all these different stuff, this little girl, we're looking to get her some gauze to cover up this wound that her dad just inflicted on her. Just the whole situation was just heartbreaking. And so we go into the store, and mom's with us, and we get some gauze for a little girl. We get her some food. It was pretty obvious she hadn't eaten that day. And what happened next? This is, first off, let me take you back to just my thinking, where in this moment I was really opened up to just violence against children looks like. Because in my house, we got a spanking from my dad when we were misbehaving, and we got yelled at, but violence, real violence, that never occurred. I'd never seen it happen. It didn't happen to any of my friends, or at least I didn't know of. But in this moment, I saw violence. I saw just random, evil, malicious violence, and how that affects the most vulnerable, which in this moment was this little girl. So we're getting her this gauze, this food, and the store clerk, he notices something is a little off. He's like, there's these two Americans, this mom, this little girl, she's bleeding, and she doesn't have any toys, and it's Three Kings Day. And so he takes out this Barbie doll. This Barbie doll is a total Barbie knockoff, you could just tell, but a Barbie doll nonetheless. And it probably cost $1.50 or something. And he looked at her and he gave it to her for free. And he was like, "Hey, happy Three Kings Day." And despite the blood, despite the sweat, despite the tears, she looked at that doll as if it was the most priceless thing that she'd ever been given. She ran outside, opened it up, and immediately started playing with the other kids, looking at her, and there's still blood, there's still tears, she was still dressed like Dobby the house elf, but she was playing with that doll with the other kids. And for a second, she wasn't the kid that came from an abused household. She wasn't the kid who had the scars that she had to cover up at school. She was just a kid, just like the other kids, playing with her Barbie dolls on Three Kings Day. And that was the day I think that Libertas, the idea of it, was really started, because I just saw the violence against little girls, against children, against women. And even though I was only 20 years old at the time, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do something about this at some point in my life. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm going to do to help kids, but I want to do something to help in some way or form, whatever that looks like. And unbeknownst to me, a couple weeks later, I'd be exposed to just the kind of cause I wanted to be involved in, but I didn't recognize it at the time. I think that's an important concept, is when it comes to human trafficking and what we're doing to stop it, is you have to kind of know what it is and know what it isn't. And I wasn't aware of either. And so I remember, walking down the street, and there were these European dudes, maybe mid-60s, hanging out with these 14, 15-year-old girls, and they were kissing and making out, and I was like, why are these girls hanging out with these old men? What are they doing? They must be bad kids or something. What are they doing out here on the street? Totally putting the blame on them. It didn't occur to me that they had no choice of who they were with that night, had no choice of what was being done to them. It didn't register down there in the streets into the Dominican Republic. And so, I go throughout my time living in the Dominican Republic. I go to university, and at university, there's someone that came and spoke to us once. I can't remember their name, but they talked about human trafficking and modern day slavery, and that there was statistically more slaves in 2012 than there's ever been at any point in human history. And I was kind of shook by that, because I assumed that slavery died with Abraham Lincoln, that there were no more slaves, that there were no more issues, that Abraham Lincoln took care of all that. And he mentioned, he was backpacking through Southeast Asia, and he was gathering research, and he did all these things in Thailand and Cambodia, and he mentioned some of the places where he'd seen modern day slavery. And some of the places that he mentioned were Cambodia, Thailand, Uganda, and then Russia, and then Haiti, Dominican Republic, places like that. And he said Dominican Republic, and that just, it shook me. I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't stop thinking about it, because over the time of living in the Dominican Republic, over my time living in the Dominican Republic, I had fallen in love with these people. Just fallen in love. Everything about their culture, the way that they are. And to think that there were people on that island that were suffering in this way, I couldn't get out of my head. Couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I knew I had to do more. So I was researching, I was reading, I read all these books, all these podcasts, all these different things, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to be on the ground. I wanted to learn what was going on. And so what I did is I sold everything I had. There was any kind of value. So school textbooks, my bed, some video games that, back when people were looking to get Nintendo GameCube games because the Wii had come out. Anything that had value to buy that plane ticket, that JetBlue plane ticket that took me from Salt Lake City down to Santo Domingo. And so I go down there, and I'm down there, and I'm looking to learn. And I had read that girls were sold in dance clubs, brothels. So, I've never been inside one of those. So I was like, man, how the hell am I gonna go in here? So I'm sure I was just awkward as all get out. But I just came down there to learn. I wasn't undercover. I wasn't looking to rescue anybody. I wasn't looking to take pictures. I was just looking to have conversations with people to find out what was going on. And so I go to this dance club in this place called Boca Chica. It's a small coastal town about a half hour outside of the capital city of the Dominican Republic. And I went into this dance club, and there were young girls there, and there was a pimp there, and the pimps asked me questions, and I'm like, hey, I'm not here to have sex with any of these girls. I'm just here to talk. And dude, this guy looked at me as if I was his worst enemy. He was like, dude, get out of my club, man. You're a cop. Like, I'll kill you. Like, what are you doing here? And I tried to be super transparent and honest of like, hey, I'm just here to talk with them. I'm a little nervous. And so I looked at the youngest girl in there. It was maybe around 13 years old. And I was like, how much is she worth? How much is an hour of her time worth? And he was like, $20. And I was like, okay, I'll give you 35 for 45 minutes. And he was like, okay. That was my first exposure to just the evil, like just how evil these people are that are selling these kids. Because like money, when I offered him money, it totally just dropped his defense. He let me talk to this girl and nothing of it. Like just he was like, okay, do whatever you want. So I take her to buy her dinner or something, and we're talking, and she's just terrified of me, just shaking. And so I tried to do my best to just lower her defense. And I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm not here to do anything to you. I'm not going to have sex with you. I just want to learn your story. And when I told her that I wasn't going to have sex with her, you would have thought I had just given her $1,000. Like, just the relief that came over her face. She was able to eat. The nerves were gone. You know how that, when you're nervous, like you can't eat because you feel like you're full, but it's that pit in your stomach. She was totally okay. And we started talking, and she was telling me, she's like, I thought you were going to be my first client of the day of this experience. And she started telling me more about her story. Someone came to her house, a recruiter, offered her a job, education, just a poor family from Santo Domingo. And, this family, they were like, they thought this person was a godsend. This person didn't come, dressed in chains or looking evil or hooded or anything like that. This recruiter was just a normal person, nicely dressed, soft-spoken. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. No one to give the vibe like this person is evil. And so they went with them. They sent their daughter with them, assuming that they had just hit the lottery. But what they didn't know is that they had just sent their daughter to a living hell. When she got to the club, they told her that she wasn't going to be a waitress, that she would have to see clients, that she would have to have sex for money. And she told her parents what she was doing, that they would go back and get her little sister, who was around 7 or 8 at the time. And then on top of that, there was a debt that she had to pay for every day that she was there, where she drank drinks or she ate. There was a debt that was incurred on her that she would never been able to pay off. My heart was already breaking just hearing this story and how she was just trapped in this hellhole and what her life looked like. And she was like, I thought you were going to be my first client, but she's like, I come from a very Catholic home. And my first client last night, he asked for anal sex. And I didn't know what that was. And so my traffickers, they took me to a room and forced me to watch anal sex porn the whole night, so I would know what to expect the next time a client asked for that. Which, it goes into another conversation of just like the porn industry and how the porn industry is, that's another conversation we'll have at a different time. But everything this girl said broke my heart. I thought I was ready because I had read, I had listened, I had done all these things of what these people were experiencing. And it was the experience meeting a survivor, a victim for the first time. It changed me. And so I left her there. I thanked her, shook her hand, left, and couldn't stop thinking about her. My heart broke. I cried myself to sleep that night. I was in my hotel room at the Hilton or something, and I was like, I'm going to go back and check on her the next day, have dinner with her again. And so I do. I go back the next day, and she wasn't there. They had moved her already. Something had happened. She went somewhere else, and she wasn't there. So that story still, even now, like sharing on a podcast, weighs heavily on my heart of just what these girls experience and that first trip that I took to meet these victims, meet these survivors. And so for 2 weeks, I spent just researching street trafficking, brothel trafficking, the online scene. It was way different even back then. Facebook was the only social media platform way back when. And now, we TikTok and Instagram, Snapchat, all these different stuff. Like So I came home and I was just so. I remember I came home. I think someone gave me some points or something. I got to go to like the Delta Lounge in Atlanta. I got my flight off like one of those weird websites where like take you through like JetBlue and take you back through Delta, and somehow I gained access to the Delta Lounge, and just thoughts going through my head of just, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Just heartbroken of the reality looks like just a plane ride away. And I didn't have to go that far, as you learn and you study these things, like even here in my apartment, like there's all sorts of trafficking happening in Wyoming, Utah, Idaho. Utah has a very robust investigation team of people that investigate human trafficking crimes in Utah. Idaho has become one of the CSAM capitals of the world, CSAM being the new term for what used to be called child pornography. And so you don't have to go far to find it. You don't have to go to an island like I did. You can sometimes go in your same apartment complex. So I gained access to the Delta Lounge. I was in there and I met this guy and we started talking. He had a Dominican Republic shirt on. I had a Dominican Republic hat on. And so we started talking and he was like, and I don't know if he was a pedophile per se, but he was telling me about his profession, and he was a doctor, and he was going back to St. Louis or whatever. I don't remember where he's from. And he was like, Dominican Republic is great. Like I can leave my practice at 5 p.m. on a Friday, be in the Dominican Republic by 10 p.m., and then be with women all weekend, and then be back at my practice 9 a.m. on Monday. And I was so disgusted. I was like, dude, this is the reason this crime exists. This guy is the reason that these girls have to suffer. And I walked out. I was so sick, just walked out. I started walking, and I had in my mind, I was like, what am I going to study to make a ton of money so that I can help these victims, these survivors in the future? When I retire, when I'm done working, I can dedicate myself full time to this. I got to thinking, the little girl I met in that brothel. If I wait 25 years after my career is done to do something about this, and let's say she's raped 4 times a day, how many times is she going to be raped before I just decide to do something? Statistically, if I don't intervene, if someone doesn't intervene, doesn't have to be me, anybody, she'll end up dead. So 25 years from now, when I decide to get into the fight full time, statistically, she'll be dead. And my whole mindset changed of like, what do I do? What can I do right now? Like, I don't have money, I don't have experience, but I got to do something right now. And that's how Libertas International got started. It started out with the name Gifts of Grace. So you see in a lot of our documents, it's Gifts of Grace. It's named after that gift that I mentioned earlier in this podcast. But as it grew, it just started focusing on Dominican Republic. And then I got a call from a Colombian police officer pleading for help in Colombia. And then I got a call from a social worker in Guatemala, pleading for help in Guatemala, to where we had to change the name because our scope had changed. It wasn't just the Dominican Republic, it was Latin America. And how do we serve survivors all throughout Latin America? And that's what we do. At the start, I didn't have a lot of experience. Started working with survivors through other organizations, started getting people to donate, got myself registered, got myself an LLC, got myself a 401c3 nonprofit. And, all this time later, Libertas International, we've supported over 3,000 survivors of human trafficking throughout Latin America and helped with the arrest with almost 100 perpetrators. The majority of those being American citizens who, just like this doctor that I met in the Delta Lounge, traveled to Latin America to abuse the most vulnerable. And so that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. And that's why we need your help. The crime is continuing to grow. The need is continuing to grow. And our motto is that when a survivor comes to us asking for help in their most vulnerable moment, we never want to turn them away. And so that is the whole point of this podcast. I hope I haven't disturbed you too much. I hope I've inspired you. That I've opened your eyes to the reality of what's actually happening out there. But at the same time, giving you hope that you can do something. You go to our website, libertasfreedom.org, become a monthly donor, make a donation. That's you helping us. That's you ensuring that when a survivor comes to us for help, that they aren't turned away. And so that would be my plea at the end of this podcast is please visit our website. Please make a donation. Please download this podcast. Now you know the story of Libertas International. You know me a little bit better. I hope that you'll support us because we need your help. We need your support because the need is great. And I believe that with your help, we can help make a difference. I'm not going to lie to you and say that we can end this thing. I don't know if we can, but we can make a difference for so many survivors of trafficking to ensure that they get the healing, that they get the empowerment, and they get the justice that they deserve. And that is my plea with you this evening, that you check us out, subscribe to this podcast, at the very least share this podcast with another person so that they can get to know a little bit about what Libertas International is all about. And this is Libertas International Podcast. I look forward to hearing your thoughts, your feedback. Please give us a like. Please subscribe. Please like us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we will see you next time on the Libertas International Podcast. This is the founder, Tyler Schwab, signing off. We will see you next time.